Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to Solo Score Rush. We are getting into this match in the round of 16. That's happening quite early. It will be the first round of 16 match to be streamed, so it is going to be very interesting to see how both these players do. Especially because, I mean, this is like around the kind of mid-seed range, at least for Soundie. Guilherme maybe being a little bit on the lower end, but I think it'll be very interesting to see how both these players do on this pool, especially as things have gotten harder. But we are getting into the roles now, so let's see what both these players ban. And with the addition of two more picks, it will be very interesting to see what does get banned. But I'm your commentators know, and I'm very excited to see how this goes. We see an LN1 ban right off the bat, which I think sounds like a good ban, especially because Soundie is pretty decent when it comes to like these LNs. I've seen them throughout tournaments. They've been able to play a lot of like LNs pretty decently, especially like in the lower range, but this is on the harder range, so things potentially could switch up. It really just depends. It looks like we'll be seeing a race 2 ban on the side of Soundie. I think this makes a little bit of sense. I do believe they were struggling a little bit on these more physical picks in their last match, so it does make sense. Although we'll kind of have to see how both these players do. I mean, especially given that LN ban, I expect Soundie to kind of stay within the lower range of the pool, especially because of how much coordination is required for a lot of these picks. Maybe not so much in something like JR. It is a little bit more free flow, a lot more dumpier, with a lot of kind of just burst throughout this file. A lot of just kind of burst control being required, not as much coordination as compared to maybe some of these other hybrids like Hybrid 1 or Hybrid 3. So maybe it is one of those hybrids that could favor Rice players ever so slightly, especially just considering how prevalent Rice is within this pick as well. But we are getting into this first pick, so we'll kind of see how things go off. I think if we're able to see Goldhammer get this pick, potentially they might want to stay within the more kind of techie Rice. I mean, we did see a ban on Rice 2 from Soundie, so potentially they might want to go for the more physical ones if they are rather consistent and if they also have that kind of accuracy intact, especially on a pick like this one that's a lot more techier. I would say being able to hold a good accuracy on these more technical files probably is a good sign, especially for the more simpler ones. But we do see Gold struggling just a little bit with those releases, which it is kind of understandable, especially because a lot of these releases tend to be everywhere, and especially when you have to transition in and out of those elements into the right section, it makes trying to hold good accuracy on this a lot more difficult, especially just because it is a technical hybrid as well. Soundie doing just well, as I kind of do expect, at least within this kind of LNE hybridy section, being able to capitalize a lot on these LNs, especially just because of how awkward they can be. I mean, you can see Gould kind of struggling a little bit on the more release side. I mean, you see at times they do release quite a bit early, whether it might just be that they aren't too comfortable with it, or it might just be Percy. Especially on a pick like this one where all the LNs are kind of everywhere, it makes playing this and trying to hold good accuracy with Percy just a lot more harder. But we do get into a little bit of a calmer section. I mean, there isn't really too much Fool can do, especially as they've been struggling just a little bit with those LNs. But continuing on, I don't know, I feel like it's going to be very hard for the league to kind of switch back, unless we see a miss from Soundie. And I was just going to say, I mean, Soundie hasn't been the most consistent throughout this tournament, and starting to show off quite early, especially on a pick like this one. Definitely not the scariest time to miss, especially just because it is a hybrid LN, where Soundie has a little bit of that accuracy advantage. just because we're not really having an Ellen accuracy. I mean, of course, this is quite ricey, so maybe not as far apart as it could be on maybe something like Ellen, but as Soundie struggling just a little bit at the end, their consistency starts to fall off just a little bit. That lead is still gonna be in the lead of Soundie, but it's gonna be very, very difficult for Cool to get that lead, especially as we are closing things off. But it is a good start for both of these players. And just the match overall, I mean, a lot of these matches, especially last week, when we saw seed differences this high, it usually tend to be one-sided, but we see things start to be just a lot more closer. I mean, 2,000 score. It's possible to just accumulate that much on one of the rice picks if we see a miss from Soundie and Ghoul's able to stay very, very consistent. I mean, they managed to hold on to the FC on this one. While it is maybe a little bit on the lighter side physically, it is still quite impressive. But it looks like we'll be seeing Rice 1 a little bit of a more physical Rice pick. It could work out if they are physical enough to just keep their consistency on this one, especially given that Soundie hasn't been the most consistent player. They're able to hold the accuracy down, but it just really is a matter of that consistency. But we'll see. I think this is a good pick to test out, but it might be a little bit risky, given that it's a little bit more on that kind of raw skillish area. Maybe not as much as something like last week with Exile, but it is still quite physical, especially just because it's a speed pick. There's a lot of just technicality needed to be able to hold good accuracy on these types of patterns. I mean, especially just because with speed picks, you do need a lot of that kind of figure independency, that figure control. Maybe not like the figure control, figure independency that's needed to play LNs, but it definitely does require a type of finger independency. But here we go, going into our pretty fast pick. We'll see how something like this one goes, especially just because we saw Rice 2 ban. It could be a good sign for Ghoul, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how this rolls out. I mean, even a slight win on something like this isn't the worst, although there might be a little bit of worries if we do get into the tiebreaker, especially given how that last pick went. But given how that last pick was still fairly close, it could still be a very, very close match. I mean, we see Ghoul with a slight accuracy lead, especially as we are starting to finally get into this course where the streams maybe not as technical as a pick like Exile, but they are still quite fast and there's still a little bit of technicality required, especially as we start to see these kind of mini 3-lane sections, which it can be very easy just to choke on those ones. Looks like that was a real miss. Or not, okay. Yeah, I wasn't too sure because I did mess up a little bit, but we're gonna maybe see this score lead be negated. This could very, very well be just a very, very close match where neither side really has the advantage. But as we just continue going on, Soundie dropping a little bit in that main section, and especially as the technicality in this section just ramps up ever so slightly, it really is just going to come down to who has the better accuracy in this section alone. And especially with that consistency playing a major part in a pick like this. As we do get into this final section, unless we see a miss on the side of Ghoul, I kind of see this lead being a great cushion for him. Especially just given that there are a lot of elements and hybrids that can be abused, especially with what we saw last pick. As we are ending off this stream section, we're going to see that score lead be negated right away. Very, very nice score from both of these players. I mean, especially as things are starting to ramp up, you do have to expect the consistency aspect for a lot of these players to kind of start lowering down. So it does make sense why we are starting to see quite a few drops from Soundie already. but it is their pick again, and I think they're free to kind of stay on any of these rices. I mean, especially that their consistency has been a little bit higher. I mean, I expect maybe something like rice, maybe rice 5. I think rice 5 or rice 6 could work, especially given that they are a little bit more, well, rice 6 being a little bit more physical, but rice 5 being a little bit more technical. I mean, if we want to go into a more technical route, we could go for rice 4. Rice 3 I think might be a little bit of a gray area, but I mean, given the consistency, it might be okay. I mean, we do see that Real has the accuracy advantage on these rice picks, so it's definitely not the worst choice, but it looks like we'll be seeing rice 5 as I said earlier. I think this is a fine pick. Probably one of the better ones, just given that it is a little bit more awkward. It is a little bit speedy. I think rice 6 also could be another good one, but that is for a little bit later. But we will see how this one goes. It is going to be our dump pick. Still being a little bit technical. I mean, it is a dump pick. You do kind of have to expect a little bit of technicality with some of these patterns, especially as they kind of go in and out. So we'll see how this one goes. I mean, this one isn't as physical, maybe, as like Rice 1. So maybe Soundie might be able to catch up a little bit. Alright, I just wanted to make sure if that was a real miss or not, but it does seem to be a real one, so a little bit unfortunate. But as we start to get into these more dumpy patterns, they're going to be a little bit fast, but they aren't going to be as physical as something like Rice 1 perhaps. It is still quite tricky to kind of hold on these patterns, and it's very easy just to drop a miss just because they kind of come suddenly, especially when you kind of have these like mini stop and go motions where you're kind of hitting a lot, you stop for a second and then continue back up. It can make transitioning between them just ever so slightly difficult, and especially when you're trying to maintain that accuracy. I mean, I would think especially for those accuracy players that kind of have that kind of hidden metronome playing in the background, it could make following something like this one just a little bit rougher, especially with just how kind of awkward these snaps could be at times. I mean, you see some of these snaps kind of almost looking like grace notes, and then some of them more looking like these string bursts. But that awkwardness definitely catching up to Soundie just a little bit. I mean, we see Gold having that accuracy advantage very, very strong. But there are still the Ellen picks for Soundie and even the hybrid, so potentially they might want to go to one of those and potentially try to negate some of that score lead. But these Rice picks definitely hurting Soundie just a lot more. It's definitely a matter of that kind of consistency and not having that strong accuracy as opposed to a lot of these other Ellen and hybrid picks. But with this kind of second half, I mean, things are going to ramp up just a little bit, but I doubt we'll see the score leads shift, especially with the consistency that we've been seeing from both these players. Definitely being off opposite worlds. But that does conclude Rice 5. With that lead definitely starting to grow a lot more. That Rice aspect definitely favoring Ghoul a lot more, and I think maybe a bit of an interesting matchup, especially just given that usually with these kind of Rice Ellen battles, maybe not as big as a Rice Ellen battle here, but I mean, we do see Soundie have just that advantage within the Ellen section. We usually see it be a little bit more one-sided, but right now, I mean, with these Rice sections, it's a bit one-sided, but the Ellens weren't even that like one-sided, at least when it came to hybrid too. But it looks like we'll be seeing our Ellen 4 pick, our Ellen Wall. I think this could be a good pick, especially given that Ellen 1 was banned. I think this and Ellen 3 are probably the smartest moves, especially just because Ellen 3 requires a little bit of that kind of coordination aspect. I could see this being a very, very good pick, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how this goes. here we go. As we go into this fourth pick. I am so excited to see how this one goes. Especially because, I mean, we haven't really seen Soundie pick a lot of their better picks. And we saw how Hybrid 2 went. It wasn't even that far. It really just was a matter of accuracy. And I think, especially on a pick like this one, that might just matter even a lot more. Especially because it's more Ellen-oriented. Because we saw Hybrid 2, it wasn't as Ellen-oriented. I mean, it might have been just a little bit ricey. And it just wasn't that far. But Soundie definitely struggling a lot more with that consistency. It is a little bit worrying, especially on a pick that on paper should favor them just a little bit more. But, I mean, it was a bit of an early drop, so if we do see a little drop in that consistency, maybe once, then maybe it won't be too bad. But as we do get into this first section, definitely not favoring either player as much, especially with how things are going. There is that coordination aspect that's still needed on a section like this one, but Soundie is really struggling a lot on a pick like this one, which I would think favors him just a little bit more. I mean, even despite that, the lead's still on the other side, but there is still more of these sessions. Soundie just really has to pick up that consistency. Potentially maybe the coordination aspect not being as strong, or maybe just the physical requirement needed for a pick like this one. I mean, one thing to also note is it is a bit of a more unorthodox pick in terms of pools. I mean, how often do you really see Ellen walls within a regular pool structure? But it is just going to kind of come to who has the stronger Ellen. But if Soundie's able to keep that consistency and we kind of keep seeing the performance on the side of pool, potentially that score lead could be negated. There's still a lot of chance. We'll kind of have just to wait and see though, especially with the second Ellen wall section not really affecting either of these players too much. But as we kind of get into the second break part, it's more so just going to be an area where both these players are able to build up that accuracy. And as we start to transition into the final Ellen wall section, this is where we're going to really start to see if that lead can grow on the favor of Soundie, or if we potentially see it switch up. I mean, we've seen Soundie stay a little bit less consistent on all of these picks in general, but not much really happening on that lead. I mean, both these players messing up just a little bit, but as we're entering this final section, there's just so little that either of these players can really do. It's just a matter of staying as consistent as possible. But we see both of them just struggling a little bit. And as we're closing off, we're going to see that lead start to maybe be negated fully. Wow. I think that barely gives Soundie the lead. Okay, 2,000. I thought it was just a little bit more. But that is still such a good scorer lead to have. I mean, we see this pick completely pay off. I mean, that beginning was a little bit sketchy on the side of Soundie. I mean, we see them have a lot more misses, but Gold just having a lot more of those greats, and especially not having too much of a strong Ellen accuracy foundation, it really starts to build up a lot more. I mean, even if you're slightly weak in terms of just Ellen accuracy, it can build up a lot more as the Ellens kind of just continue, especially on a pick that is a lot more longer. And we really see that chain be affected. But it looks like we'll be seeing a second ban now. Soundie ban Rice 4. I think it is a smart choice. I think Rice 6 might have maybe been a little bit better, but maybe they're a little bit more comfortable with it. But that consistency is a huge factor in Rice 6. It looks like we'll be seeing Ellen 2 be banned. That's a bit of an interesting one. I mean, it's not a bad ban, but I think it's just the fact that maybe Ellen 3 might have been a bit of a better ban. Yeah, it looks like we'll be seeing Rice 6 right away, which I think is kind of, I think it's kind of expected, just given that this one's a huge consistency test. I mean, there's still that physicality aspect that's needed on a pick like Rice 6, but I think the fact that this is, I believe it is the longest Rice pick, it just makes this one a lot more worrying for Soundie. just because we haven't seen Soundie be as consistent throughout this match, and especially with just how tricky these patterns are. I mean, we saw how tricky Rice 5 was, but this one, it might not be as tricky in terms of kind of speed, but a lot of these patterns are just really awkward, especially with like the one-handed trills. I mean, it's so easy just to mess up on those, even if you're fast enough. I mean, if you're fast enough, that just the speed of how slow it can also be quite awkward. But also just trills are just awkward as well in general, so trying to act them is really, really tough. But we'll kind of have to wait and see how both of these players do. So here we go, as we're starting to get into this first section. Start to see those trills come into play. You start to see a little bit of these dumps as well. It is a little too early to say anything. I mean, with how consistent Soundie has been, it is a bit good to see a miss early on from Pool. But I think this is still quite unsafe, unless Soundie is able to manage to hold their combo this one, which I'd be very interested to see. I mean, this is, I would say, probably the hardest Rice to hold combo on. And just like that, things fall apart ever so slightly, but he still has a little bit of that cushion from those other misses, so it isn't all over yet. And I think he might have... No, I don't think he has the accuracy advantage. I was gonna say I think he might have it, but as we are kind of progressing through this, you see that lead just shrivel away bit by bit, especially as these dump sections really start to come into play. These more faster patterns, a lot of these other awkward patterns. You see some angles come in and out, and having to transition in and out of those trills makes it so much harder as well. But as we continue on, both these players still holding, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a miss quite soon. I mean, I don't really know if this is either side's favor. I mean, I was thinking that this would be more in favor of Pool, especially just because Soundie hasn't been that consistent throughout this entire match. I mean, I don't even think they've ever seen any of these picks yet. But this one, they're just holding up very, very strongly with only one miss so far. But even despite having less misses, that lead is slipping into the other side, and it's just gonna grow ever so slightly. All that Soundie can really do is just make sure to combo the rest of this to make sure that the score lead doesn't grow as high as it could. I mean, that lead not even being that big, especially with the fact that Gold has to negate some of the score lead that Soundie has, but as well as the fact there are still LN3 and the other two hybrids left. So this could not mean everything just yet. But Soundie messing up as the density ramps up a little bit. Could be a little bit awkward to just transition into this section out of the past section. I can't blame them too much. The only thing that Soundie just gonna have to hope is that Ghoul misses maybe one more time. But as the stamina factor starts to become a little bit more apparent after having to play throughout this entire file. But as we end things off, that lead gonna grow by about 15k, maybe low 15k, high 14k, I believe. But that does conclude Rice 6, a very, very technical, raw skill heavy file. We see that 15k lead. I mean, not even that much though. I mean, you might think that this lead is good, but with how we've seen all of the other picks, especially with the fact that we still have LN3 and Hybrid 4, this one's a lot more riskier. I mean, we saw a 25k of a lead get depleted in just a singular pick, so it really is in either's favor. And it looks like we'll be seeing right LN3, which I think is the smartest move. I think this LN in particular is the smartest LN pick to have gone for, and it should have been Gold's pick in all honesty. I mean, with LN2, you could argue that maybe just the fact that it isn't as technical, it isn't as maybe coordination heavy as these other picks, it might have not been as much in favor of Soundie, but banning that I think was maybe a little bit of a mistake. Not the biggest mistake, given that it is an LN, and we see Soundie absolutely destroy these LNs, at least in terms of the scoring. And I think a pick like this one, we're going to see this score potentially get mitigated. But it is really going to rely on if Soundie's able to keep that consistency intact. I mean, that's kind of the main thing we've been seeing throughout this match is that Soundie's consistency isn't the strongest, and even in previous picks, it is a little bit worrisome. But I think given how strong Goal's accuracy is on these Ellen picks, that consistency isn't gonna matter as much, but it is gonna be very nice to have throughout though. But here we go, as we're going off to this pick. So far, there isn't really too much happening. Soundie getting that early miss, as we've kind of seen in the past. But we've seen that lead just skyrocket into either player's favor in an instant. So it is still quite early to really say anything, especially as the technicality hasn't even really shown itself. I mean, you see these patterns, which are kind of coordination-esque, but this is just the small parts of what this file has to offer in terms of technicality, especially as some of the release gaps start to become even smaller. Especially as we do get into this little mini break here. I mean, there's still some of these elements which could trip a pool just ever so slightly. It really just is a matter of who just has the better accuracy, and from what we've seen so far, it is Soundie, but that consistency might have been just a little bit of a helping hand. But we'll see, especially as we start to get to this section where things start to ramp up a little bit more. I wouldn't be too surprised if we see Ghoul maybe miss, especially with how we saw LN4 go. It is a bit of a riskier area for them, especially with just the kind of coordination aspect that is needed. Soundie's just gonna really have to make sure to stay consistent throughout this and just be able to make their accuracy really shine. But neither player really dropping. This pick just being so risky, but missing on a little bit of that kind of burst. I mean, it is a little bit unexpected, so I could kind of understand why, but it is not the best area to miss, but at least it isn't within these LN sections where one miss can be like two instead. As we kind of continue on through this section, I think the accuracies are really going to start to show in here, especially with just how tight these gaps are continuing to get. I mean, you see it right here. I mean, this is the prime area to see misses from either of these players, but as we are closing off, that score lead that we saw is going to get slightly mitigated. It's going to be about 3K, high 2K, 2.5K. A very, very good lead to kind of have on the side of Soundie. And it definitely does mitigate a little bit of the damage that we saw. I mean, it really just was a matter of holding that accuracy. I mean, on a ping like this one, it wasn't even that far apart like we saw in LN4. I guess that kind of coordination aspect definitely being a lot more troublesome on the side of Ghoul. Not as much as we saw, but it's still good to have. But it is Soundie's pick. I think the smartest move would be Hybrid 4. No, Hybrid 3. Just because it is a lot more kind of Ellen bias. And Hybrid 1 just being kind of awkward. Not too awkward, but there's still a sense of awkwardness. And also just the kind of nature that Hybrid 3 is a lot more Ellen-y. It looks like we'll be seeing Ellen. Hybrid 3. I think probably the best choice Soundie could have gone. Especially as their last pick. I mean, they've exhausted out the Ellens quite fast, especially with the fact that both of them on the top of the Ellens are banned. I think this Ellen hybrid pick, it might be a little bit more in favor of Soundie compared to how Hybrid 2 went. And definitely a lot more in favor compared to Hybrid 1, just because of some of the kind of awkward rice patterning within Hybrid 1, and especially just given the fact that it isn't as Ellen focused as Hybrid 3. It's really just going to come down to being able to gain as much as an advantage as Soundie can get on Hybrid 3. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. But I think this pick is a little bit on the longer side, so it shouldn't be as bad, or at least we shouldn't miss as much of it.
This song will fuck you up. This song get suckers killed. This song don't give a fuck. This song will probably get hold in a styrofoam cup. You should play this song.
And here we go, going into our hybrid. So far, not too strong of a lead on the side of Soundie. A little bit surprising though to kind of see. I mean, I think a pick like this one would have definitely been a lot more favor on the side of Soundie, just given because of the kind of LNE nature that this has. I guess that consistency really being important on this pick especially because I think a pick like this one requires just a little bit more physicality. So I guess potentially that kind of physicality factor being a little bit more in favor of Pool, and I think also the fact that maybe these LNs don't require as much as coordination as like a lot of these other ones, but we'll kind of have to wait and see if we see any last minute changes. But so far it looks like the lead will be in favor of Pool. Definitely be an interesting pick to see it go the other way, but it definitely does give them just a little bit of area to potentially exit out of the tiebreaker final scoring. I mean, it is a 1k lead, so maybe not a lot, but I guess you kind of see the other side of Hybrid 2 that didn't happen, where we saw Soundie win just by 2k, but this time we'll see Ghoul winning by 1k. But it is Ghoul's pick. I mean, I have to expect Rice 3. Yeah, we instantly see Rice 3. I mean, I didn't really expect anything different, just given that they've been staying in the Rice side alone, and especially just given how much of a lead they've been kind of having in the Rice section. Especially with this one being a huge just consistency test, I kind of expect Soundie to struggle a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, especially because this pick is on the 3-minute mark, so that's like, I mean, there's the break section, so maybe it's like 2.5 minutes of pure chord jack, which maybe doesn't sound bad, but with, I guess, how inconsistent Soundie has been, it might be very, very dangerous. But we'll kind of have to wait and see. I mean, this is also a bit of a simpler pick, so potentially Soundie might be able to capitalize a little bit, but especially with how we saw Rice 2 ban, I am not really too sure. But I do expect high accuracies from both these players, even if we see some misses. I mean, potentially this is the one Rice pick where it could just flip the other way around. I mean, it is a chord jack pick. A lot of people are fairly comfortable with jacks, especially at this kind of lowish BPM. It is fairly dense though, so that is one thing as well. So we'll see how both these players fare on the more kind of denser sections, especially with some of the kind of dense burst. The burst here not going to be too intrusive, but it could maybe cause a break or two depending on how both these players are. But as we're kind of continuing on, the density picking up ever so slightly, not too much. So both these players are still within that kind of comfortable range of being able to play on a pick like this one. But as we continue, some of these anchors becoming a little bit prevalent, but not as bad. But I kind of worry a little bit when we start to see both the anchors and the densities really climb up. Mostly for Soundie, but I mean, if they're able to stay consistent on this one, then I think the final scoring will just be in either player's favor. But here we go. The anchor still being quite prevalent. The density not picking up just quite yet. I mean, you see a lot of these awkward patterns relying on both of the hands, where it's just 3-note anchors on both hands, making it just a little bit easier to miss, but neither of these players dropping that consistency yet. But I expect Gold to stay a bit more consistent. If we were to see any consistency drops, I believe it'd be on the side of Soundie. But even within this break section, I mean, they are hundreds of points away. It isn't even that far. But here we go, as we do get into the break section. There isn't really too much either of these players can really do. It really just is staying as consistent as possible, keeping that ratio intact, especially on a pick like this one, where ratio is really the main factor of winning. And here we go, as we do get into this final section here, both these players still holding. The awkward patterns being a little bit more intact. You see the density ramp up just a little bit. All these anchors also building up a lot more. This is where players will miss if there's any misses at all within this pick. As we continue, Soundie still holding that consistency. I think we did see a little bit of an accuracy drop. And it looks like we will see the final scoring. Soundie FCing a rice pick. I mean, I think if they were to FC any of the rice picks, this was the most crucial one. Especially with final scoring coming into play now. I mean, at this point, it really is anyone's pick. I mean, there isn't really a clear winner here, especially with just the fact that, like, neither of these players have had a huge advantage when it comes to the hybrids. We saw Hybrid 2. That was close. We saw Hybrid 3. That was also close. And especially with this one bumping up the physicality a lot more, this one is going to be exciting to see. I mean, we saw how Hybrid 2 went. Soundie barely won. That one being a little bit more technical. But we saw how Hybrid 3 went, being on the bit more simpler side. But here we go. Both players getting ready to play the tiebreaker, the final score. This is where everything matters. Like, here we go, going into NS. I am so excited to see this one. I mean, both these players, they're so good at just different things. I mean, Soundie is a little bit better when it comes to that kind of LN accuracy, but Gold being a lot more consistent and potentially maybe even more physical. But we'll kind of have to wait and see. I mean, we saw how Rise 6 went. It wasn't even too bad until, I guess, like the ending, so maybe this pick can go, it really can go to either side. I mean, especially just because this hasn't ramped up at all. This pick is so difficult. It is actually brutal. As we kind of continue on, Gold having just a little bit of that lead, but not even by that much. I mean, if it were to flip to the other side, it could instantly be in favor of Soundie to even get that win. But here we go, as we are continuing off. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the bulk of the technicality of this one. Here we go, as things are going to ramp up just a little bit on that LN side. I think this is potentially the chance where Soundie might be able to gain just a little bit of a lead. He just has to stay as consistent as possible. But Soundie just struggling a little bit when it comes to the more physical side of this. And it's definitely showing a lot more. I mean, despite the amount of mistakes that Ghoul's making throughout this, we've seen that they've struggled to kind of keep up when it comes to a lot of these more Ellen kind of picks. But on a section like this one that relies a little bit more on that physicality side, they are gaining just a little bit of that advantage. But we'll kind of have to wait and see. I mean, we see them dropping a lot of 200s in this lower section. I definitely do think potentially that kind of aspect of having maybe Percy might be not the best area to be in. But here we go, as we do get into a little bit of a more ricey section. I think this is where Ghoul is just going to have to capitalize as much as they can. This is probably where they'll be able to get the most scoring off, if anything. But we're slowly kind of transitioning back into a little bit of these more awkward patterns. You see Soundie missing, but still, there's still a lot left. There's still a lot more of these kind of technical Ellen hybrid sections, so it isn't completely over just yet, but we'll kind of have to wait, especially as we get into this section. These Ellens are going to ramp up just a little bit. They're going to be becoming a lot more apparent, especially in this section right here. This is probably the area where I would expect a lot of kind of 200s to be intact. And here we go. It's going to ramp up just a little bit more. This is where I think Soundie might be able to capitalize if they're able to stay consistent. But here we go. I mean, Ghoul is starting to drop just a little bit more, but Soundie as well. This is such a close battle. There really isn't much that can be done. I mean, it really just is a matter of that consistency. We're starting to see that lead just dwindle just a little bit. Soundie has to stay as consistent as possible. But this kind of more ricey section definitely not going to be helping at all. I mean, especially with just how technical this is. I mean, it might just be starting to help. There is so much happening. It is so hard to say that either player has to lead now. I mean, even if Soundie gets that lead, they need to get a 5.2k lead, and the lead changes! As we're starting to get into this more harder, more technical Ellen section, it looks like Soundie might be able to get this win! Soundie just has to keep that combo and that accuracy. We're starting to see Ghoul drop so much more. This is the chance Soundie has to strike. This is the area where Soundie has to capitalize off the most. And as we're getting to this ending, there's so much that they can't really mess up on. There's so little left. In this final section, I mean, it isn't as dense as the previous sections, and I think Soundie's gonna get it. Oh, that was so close. Oh my god. Soundie gets the win by a 1.4k lead. That was so close. That ending had to be the most nerve-wracking. And I'd imagine either of these players looking back, the nerves seeing how it ended. I mean, even despite all those misses from Soundie, the accuracy just helping them get on. What an insane match. Just at the end, we see Soundie get that win. And just like that, Soundie will be moving on to their next match. And I do believe Ghoul will be eliminated from the tournament. A very, very good match for both these players, and their performances just being stellar. And a huge congratulations to Soundie, and a really good fight from Ghoul. But that ending definitely shaking things up a little bit more. But that will conclude this match. There will be another match for a couple of days, the next one being on Saturday. So until then, we'll be seeing you. I've been your commentator and streamers Snow, and I will be signing out.